Afternoon. We'll give a few seconds for people to continue to join us, but we'll get started here. Thank you so much for joining our fifth and final session today of the Metro Crime Initiative, Calling in Backup. My name is Alicia Manzano, and I'll be serving as your moderator today. We'll also be getting through some great breakout groups today. We want to make sure that we get to those breakout sessions to discuss the pipeline and in calling in backup as we're discussing in this session. As you've seen reflected in these sessions, we've had many needs and vacancies throughout the criminal justice system. We need police, peer support workers, behavioral health providers, service providers, and educators to address the issues we saw Kelly encounter throughout this case study. From prevention to addiction, to incarceration, to reentry and recidivism. Today, we'll hear from a cross-section of panelists who hire, develop, and or educate these needed vocations. We are looking at culturally appropriate and diverse pipelines to serve our community needs. So let me walk you through our agenda for today, and we'll go to our first slide here. So we'll start here with welcome and introductions, and then we'll go into an update from previous sessions and career pipeline focus. We'll go into our panelist discussion, and we have a great group with us here today that I'll introduce in just a second. Then we'll go into our breakout sessions to discuss and prioritize solutions that are specific, measurable, and timely. And finally, we'll hear from Mayor Tim Keller, who brought this group together, who decided that it was high time that we all address these needs as a community, as a cross sector of colleagues, to get things done to make sure that we're tackling crime from all sides. So that's what our agenda looks like today. So here's how we started. We started this journey together back in July. Since then, we've come together as a community to propose ideas and solutions. We've done this by examining the case study of a person named Kelly. Kelly started off with issues where early intervention could have made a huge difference in Kelly's story. Kelly's life then became more complicated with criminal charges, and the district attorney, public defender, and courts became involved. Finally, Kelly ended up killing someone, and we discussed criminal sentencing options and re-entry into the community. So today, to finish our community conversation, we're going to talk about what actions we can take to get people into these necessary careers, the pipeline that we need to create to enter law enforcement, social work, casework, navigators, mental health crisis providers, tax, paralegal, legal support positions. We want to talk about all of these because it's going to take all of these folks coming together, being trained in this capacity to be able to address the growing need in our community. So again, I thank you for joining us today. And without further ado, I wanted to kick it off to Mayor Keller, who brought this group together to make sure that we were talking about how best to tackle crime from all sides. So with that, Mayor Keller.
Thanks so much, Alicia. And thank you so much for everyone who's joining us today for this session, which really focuses on career pipelines, and as we're phrasing it, calling for backup. But as Alicia rightly mentioned, it's backup across a number of fronts. It's how do we fill these key vacancies? How do we recruit for the positions that are required to make the criminal justice system work? So we all know there are straightforward examples, like our police department, for example, in Albuquerque. But we also know there are very much related examples, like our new community safety department that is in need right now of social workers and other folks to fill vacancies in that new department so it can come online this fall. And so it's about response, and our response in general, whether it's coming from this new department or APD or from nonprofits and service providers, responding at the right time. Now, I want to touch on a couple of aspects of this. And I think the first one is really just understanding that we have had an APD shortage going back over a decade. And I say shortage because there's been many studies done on this compared to other cities and so forth. So I think that is one area where we're in a different place than a lot of other cities. And I won't speak to, situations, whether it's at, other law enforcement departments in central New Mexico, but certainly at APD, this has been well documented. And we know that it's been very difficult to deal with this because it does ripple into things like how many homicides detectives do we have? How many people are doing violence intervention? How many people are doing homeless outreach? All of those are part of the shortage and also part of what APD does. So I want to just acknowledge that this is about frontline officers, but it's also about all the specialty programs that provide community support. It's also about our reentry program. And it's also about how we do alternative, with respect to like how we transform the party patrol, and we don't do that anymore. Now we offer alternatives to the criminal justice system, especially for folks in that situation, in restorative justice. All of that is part of where we have a shortage, and also part of what we view as public safety funding in general. And so for us, we know this is a difficult challenge. Now, we've also heard that the governor's office and I think some legislators are interested in bringing in 1,000 new officers. And I think this discussion is a good chance today, especially in the breakouts, for us to really have some input into how that would be helpful, right? Is it frontline officers? Is it specialists who deal with situations like the one Kelly's in? Also, is money the issue? I know at APD, it's actually not. We've fully funded our needs now for several years. It's how actually we can get folks to make that commitment to help increase the capacity in our system. So we know at APD, for example, we've actually gotten 100 new officers every year in the last 3 years, which was our commitment. But our challenge has been, and that's what we wanted to do, and we have another 100 in the pipeline, but we have lost so many officers, hundreds of officers. So the issue on the net number of people available and resources available is really about retention. So today's also an opportunity to talk about retention, and even the connection between the two, which is lateral transfers between departments. And, we don't want to just have this situation where it's musical chairs all over law enforcement departments in the state. We've got to figure out actually how to grow the ranks. And so that's what today is about, in addition to those vacancies in behavioral health, in mental health, and in the services that we provide. So I want to thank everyone for coming here today, and I'll join you to talk a little bit about what's next after we have this important discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that, Mayor Keller. And before we get started in introducing our panelists today, I want to acknowledge some folks who've joined us today. We have Representative Joy Garrett, Representative Debbie Sariñana, Representative Meredith Dixon, Representative Day Hockman Vigil, Senator Harold Pope, Ann Kelly, the Chief Deputy Attorney General, and the Chief Public Defender, Ben Bauer. And if I've missed anyone, I apologize. I will keep a lookout for those who continue to join us. So thank you so much for continuing to join us in this important conversation. We've gotten to the end of our sessions together, which is the pipelines. And so I'd like to introduce to you our panelists today. So we'll go to our PowerPoint presentation here. And first up, we'll have Raymond Fritz, who's the Academic Affairs Director for C&M Law Enforcement Academy and Criminal Justice Program. Next, we'll have Cecily Barker, Commander and Chief of Staff of the Albuquerque Police Department. Then we'll have Yvonne Garcia, Chief of Schools from Albuquerque Public Schools. Next, we would have Patrick Arguelles, Principal of Early College Academy and Career Enrichment Center for Albuquerque Public Schools. And we also have Stacy Burleson, the Executive Director of Women in Leadership. And finally, we'll have Cristina Duran. She's a PhD and Dean of Social Work at New Mexico Highlands University. So as you can see, we have a great group with us to talk about how we create that necessary pipeline to fill these important positions as we work to build up our criminal justice system from start to finish. So with that, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, and that is Mr. Raymond Fritz. Raymond?
Well, thank you very much for having me here today and including me in this discussion. And thank you to everyone attending. There's, in addressing I can't speak directly to the struggles and challenges faced by those who are actually recruiting officers, agencies, as the Academic Affairs Director for the C&M Law Enforcement Academy. But I can discuss with the knowledge that I have that I do know they're all struggling. APD is struggling. the smaller agencies are struggling to find qualified applicants to fill positions on their agencies and come in and do this and become part of this most noble profession of law enforcement. I was a member of APD for 25 years. 13 of that were in the field, and then another 12 I did as a instructor, advanced training instructor at the Albuquerque Police Academy. And I see kids coming in these days, and it makes me really proud to see these young kids. We have a class going on right now, and it's wonderful to see these kids coming in and wanting to be part of this profession. And as far as methodologies to try to improve the applicant pool and increase the success rate of these kids that are wanting to become police officers, perhaps have something in their past that is an obstacle to meeting that goal. There's just some ideas that we've bantered about here is the idea of some type of outreach or recruiting system which reaches students in their teens, maybe middle school, high school age, that starts to get them into this, into the system, into getting them familiar with what's required of being a police officer if they have aspirations to do so, what they need to do, what they shouldn't do, and kind of path them in the direction of to get them to where they want to be, and eventually to be qualified to become police officers down the road. There's things like a dual credit outreach, which captures the student's interest in a profession and paths them in that right direction. Mentorships and paying internships with law enforcement agencies for these interested students to, again, give them opportunities to see what it's like, get mentorship and guidance from law enforcement to help them along the way and get them to where they want to be and need to be as far as being qualified applicants to join a law enforcement agency. There's also to assist with the applicant pool and the training capability. There does need to be some changes within the New Mexico Administrative Code and possibly statutory language to create flexibility and the ability to deliver basic police officer training. As it stands now, the way it's viewed, basic police officer training is to be delivered consecutively as one block. Generally it's 16, 17, 18 weeks at a minimum to cover the New Mexico Department of Public Safety basic police officer training curriculum. And if you look at other states, and I've done research into the methodologies of other states, it will require changes to the administrative code in order to facilitate us and allow us to deliver in a different manner. For example, utilizing online instruction or online delivery, some type of possibly modular delivery that it can be strung out over the course of perhaps, say, a 4-term collegiate program, and by the time they come out the other end, they have they're eligible to take the law enforcement certification examination and become certified law enforcement officers. Possibly even look at, and this is something that I've looked at, is the possibility of having some type of curriculum developed and then the delivery of an academy to allow for them to come out with a degree in law enforcement, a law enforcement AAS, or Associates of Applied Science. So, there's opportunities that exist. They will require some different, changes to take place to allow us some flexibility. Self-sponsor in the state of New Mexico is not very big. It's not very big as far as numbers. Other states do have that, and they have students putting themselves through college attaining their certification as a law enforcement officer, and then they go market themselves to agencies around their state. So again, it's just another opportunity for these students to be able to fill this need of law enforcement for police officers on the street.
Thank you so much, Mr. Fritz. And I think we have the right group of people here, even just today. You mentioned starting at 13 years old, maybe starting young and getting people interested, young students. So I'm looking at you here, Yvonne, on the screen, and and Principal Arguelles. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I think there are some big things that can be accomplished if we do implement some of the ideas that you just discussed as well, Mr. Fritz. And of course, I told you once I started recognizing folks, I knew I was going to miss some. So I just want to acknowledge that City Councilor Clarissa Pena has joined us, and Chief Judge Maria Dominguez has also joined us. So thank you so much for being here with us today. Next, I'd like to hand it off to Commander and Chief of Staff at the Albuquerque Police Department, Cecily Barker, to share with us, maybe some of the challenges that they've had at the Albuquerque Police Department in ensuring that we're getting a pipeline of folks interested in law enforcement and how we retain those folks to stay serving in those capacities. So with that, Chief of Staff Barker.
Thank you, Alicia. I just want to take a minute to thank everyone for being here today and for the opportunity I have to speak on behalf of the Albuquerque Police Department. I will have two requests to make today, but before we talk about those, I'd like to give you a brief history of how we got to where we're at today and what we're doing about it. In 2008, the Albuquerque Police Department had 1,107 sworn police officers. That number dropped to its lowest in 2016, where there were 831 sworn police officers. The number has since increased. Our recruiting division has worked diligently to recruit and hire police officers and other difficult to recruit civilian positions within the police department. Challenges to their efforts include both finding individuals interested in being a police officer and, once hired, retaining those police officers. We are doing all we can, but we are going to be asking for help. Factors that contribute to the ability to retain police that I will briefly discuss include retirement benefits. Historical examples specific to the Albuquerque Police Department include an approximate 2.41% pay cut, an elimination of the expected 4% raise, and an increase of health insurance costs in 2010. Over a 3-year period from 2014 to 2016, the time in which one qualified for COLA went from 2 years to 7 years. This created an incentive for personnel to leave the department. Concerning the pay, there was an increase in 2015 to 2017. There was another significant pay increase in 2019 of 10.2%, with a subsequent pay increase in 2020 of 4.5%. Additionally, there have been hiring bonuses for police cadets, laterals, and other difficult to recruit positions have been implemented. The most recent incentives included a 3.57 to 9.68% pay increase for police in 2018. Throughout the last several years, hiring incentives have been offered to police cadets, police laterals, and other difficult to recruit positions, to include police dispatch. Sick leave transfer, enhanced vacation scales, and finder's fees have also been implemented throughout the city. In August of 2021, hiring bonuses were implemented for difficult to recruit positions. This included an incentive of up to $15,000 for police laterals and $1,500 for 911-242 dispatchers. A sick leave transfer and vacation accrual rate was also implemented based on years of service and relocation fees of up to $5,000. Additionally, employees are eligible for up to a $500 finder fee for recruiting employees in difficult to recruit positions throughout the city. As noted, diligent efforts have been made towards recruiting and retaining police officers. While these efforts will continue, we have two asks today. The first ask we have is for the state to create an advertising program for law enforcement. Law enforcement nationwide is experiencing challenges in recruiting new applicants throughout the profession. New Mexico is not excluded from these recruiting challenges, and often departments are competing within the same pool of applicants. Each department is becoming more and more competitive within the state of New Mexico. However, the ability to consistently recruit from outside of the state will prove to be beneficial. Advertising, such as New Mexico True Advertising, provides a means to consistently advertise New Mexico law enforcement to our state applicants. And by bringing awareness to out-of-state applicants of opportunity in New Mexico, many departments statewide would likely benefit in these recruitment efforts. I'm going to ask that we show the slides that were provided in reference to the DROP program, which is going to be another ask that we are looking for a task force to be created to look at retention and recruitment efforts for law enforcement, to include sworn officers, 911 personnel, and other difficult to recruit positions. What we would like the task force to look at, or one of the options, is the DROP program, which is the Deferred Retirement Option Plan. This allows employees to keep working while their earned retirement accumulates into an account. The city keeps employees on longer while employees build for a more secure retirement. An employee who would otherwise be eligible to retire and start drawing benefits from an employer's defined benefit plan keeps working. Rather than having those additional years of service included in future benefit calculations, the employer would place a lump sum of money into a separate account for each year the employee remains on the job. This account earns interest, and once the employer retires, the money held in that account is paid, interest included, on top of money accumulated in the pension plan over the course of the employee's career. We would ask that the task force consider that the money being placed to the side be used to help subsidize health insurance for the officer when they retire at 24 or 25 years. And the next slide is going to show the states that are currently using the DROP program. As you can see, there are 28 states. Thank you for your time.
And thank you for that, Commander Barker. And, as I've been mentioning on all of these sessions, it's so important for us to hear very clear, specific, measurable, reachable goals. And so I appreciate you pointing out some specifics to us. Same with you, Mr. Fritz. And I'm going to ask each participant to continue to do that, because what we'd like to do once we get into the breakout sessions part of the program, we want to be able to discuss these options. How can we prioritize these? How can we get these things done? Is it funding? Is it capacity building for organizations or entities? And so you'll hear a lot of folks asking for some very specific things around what the needs are for their entity or for the system of care in general. So next up, I'd like to introduce Yvonne Garcia, Chief of Schools for Albuquerque Public Schools. Ms. Garcia.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you for inviting Mr. Arguelles and I to be here. And truly, I'm just going to give you a little bit of an overview before I lead into Mr. Arguelles, because he really has some very specific pathways, pipeline ideas that could be built upon that already exist at his school. But before I do that, we do know that especially when it comes to crime, but when it comes to a lot of things, education is a definite solution. And what we also know is, in order for that solution to exist that education provides, is we have to have engagement, enrollment, and engagement of our students. In order to engage our students, we have to provide things that are interesting for them, that they can build onto. And so when we talk about pipelines and pathways, we really want to do twofold on two sides. Really capture the students' interests and look at them as a human being, and what are you interested on, and what strengths can we build, what skills can we build, so that you can move, graduate, and go into the work world ready for the work world. And we also have to look at, well, what is the work world need? And right now, as we are looking at our career technical education program, and we have not revamped that program in many, many years, at the school that Mr. Arguelles is going to talk about, he always fills in some holes for us, but we have not looked at the program overarching in a lot of years, and what we are offering for our kids in terms of certifiable areas where they graduate from high school ready for work and further education in the areas that they long to be in, and that will provide employment when they graduate. And so we have that opportunity. So what you will see us starting to do is to really start looking at the workforce solutions research to see what employment is out there. Obviously, what the mayor talked about earlier are things that we're going to start working on immediately so that we can start feeding the work world there. We also have the interest in internships. We also have the mentorships for our students. That's how we engage them. They feel useful, they build skills, and it keeps them in school. Our measurables are always graduation rate and enrollment rate. And so it's pretty cut and dry that we want to see kids in certifiable programs where they can leave ready for the next level, ready to be able to participate in the jobs that are open to them. We have found over the years, and just so that you know this, that our dual enrollment really provides that opportunity. So Mr. Fritz, when you were talking about programs, it's nice if we can start younger and students are working towards their basic academic skills, as well as kind of fine tuning, not making them really choose what they want to be when they grow up, but really capitalizing on their interest areas and what is available so that they leave a little bit more ready than what we have seen in the past. So that's what we're working towards in the big picture of our district. And with some of the specific areas that you ask about, Mr. Arguelles is here to speak about those. And he is the principal of our Career Enrichment Center, which is a magnet school for the entire city.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me today, Yvonne, Ms. Garcia. Thank you for that all the wonderful things you just said. The Career Enrichment Center is an APS program. Our vision is every student, every day, career ready, college bound. And that's the core of what we do on a daily basis. And just to give you an example, as I was entering this room we're in the middle of construction, so there's not many spaces on campus for us to have a place to be alone. So as I was entering this room, I passed our EMT students who were working on transferring a body from their cart to the ambulance. Our nursing students are working on a flu. They're going to be giving the flu vaccine in a couple of weeks, and then we're practicing that. Our certified nursing assistants were practicing giving oxygen to senior citizens. A lot of those students will work in senior citizen homes and places like that. Our police service aid students were off on the concourse doing PT. My automotive kids are working on electrical systems and brakes. I had a few other, our cosmetology kids, they're practicing facials right now. So we have a lot of stuff going on, okay? And all of it we try to meet the needs of a diverse student population. We want career readiness. We want career exploration, career preparation, internships, dual enrollment, which we do a lot of. The EMT class is 10 dual credit hours at UNM and an opportunity to take the National Registry to become an EMT. We have leadership development, financial classes. We have all kinds of things. But one of the things that we've learned through this whole process and over time is a degree no longer guarantees that a worker has the requisite skill set needed by a business. I mean, there has to be more. And so we've really done a good job of replacing a lot of that emphasis with certification. For example, our automotive system, if they take it as a 2-year program, they walk out with 16 dual credit hours through CNM, and they get NATEV certification. That means $4 to $6 an hour more at an auto shop that recognizes that certification, and there's plenty of those. Our cosmetology students get hours towards certification. Our nursing program, our LPN nursing program, is a 5-semester monster of a program, but when those kids are done, they become LPNs, and a huge percentage of them pass that test and are working. Many of them are working now, helping through this pandemic. We have the certified nursing assistant program, same thing. Those kids finish and they go on to become certified nurses, and they're working. Our EMT kids, We have an incredible program with the Albuquerque Fire Rescue. And some of those kids are making $55,000, $60,000 a year after a 90-day probation period. And so we have wildland firefighting through CNM. We have some web scripting. So I love to see Mayor Keller here because we have the police service aid program. And that's been a mayor's initiative for a while. And it's amazing. These kids are learning to become police service aides and eventually become police officers. And I believe to date, over the last 5 years, I think 12 of our students, our former PSA students, have now become police officers. That is an incredible pipeline. But one of the things that I wanted to kind of touch base on, and I think it's one of those things that's important. About 5 years ago, and I want to thank Miss Garcia because she helped us with this whole kind of project, I want to call it. We started working on career pathways that accelerated access to the middle class for our underprivileged students. And I think that's really important because I think sometimes there's a misconception that only great kids come to CC or only smart kids or only whatever kids. Who cares what they call it? We take any kid. We take any kid that wants to learn. And so our focus is moving in some areas to an underserved youth. And many of those youth have been in the judicial system. And I was a JPO for a very brief period of time many years ago. If anybody remembers Judge Brown, that's how long ago it was. And what I learned, delinquency is a career pathway. And if we can get them off of that pathway and get them onto a different pathway, if we connect with that at-risk youth to promising careers, if we can give them some soft and technical skill development, I think we can change a lot of things in this city. And I feel like that's a passion for many people in this room. And it's a passion at our school. And we're lucky to have people like Ms. Garcia helping guide us in that direction. I'm going to shut up because I could go on for hours.
Mr. Arguelles, thank you so much. You just clearly articulated how important it is to have access to some of these programs. As you mentioned, they're available to everybody. And this is an equity issue, getting folks in these roles, people who look like me, who look like you, who look like their neighbors, to get out into the community and work alongside them as peers and as mentors. So important. And I think that if we could just continue the conversation as to how we can integrate even more pathways to some of these careers, that would be amazing. So hopefully this is just the beginning of that conversation. And with that, I'd really love to introduce Miss Stacy Burleson, who is doing this important work, peer mentorship, helping folks who are reintegrating back into some of these roles in our community. So with that, Stacy, I'd really love to hear what your thoughts are on, maybe capacity building and making sure that we have folks who are helping organizations like yours to build up.
All right, thank you so much. I think it's very important to have organizations like myself. And I had just briefly wanted to talk about what they were saying about, law enforcement. And I definitely think that we need more law enforcement, but it doesn't matter how many law enforcement officers we get until we start addressing the other things that's going on out in the community. And when it comes to like education, we need to start looking at, if I think about the women that are locked up in the Department of Corrections, 85% are mothers. And when we think about prevention, I think that if we start targeting these at-risk youth now that, we probably could help them. And so like my organization, we've been running for a whole year. We are peer run led. All three of us, two other young ladies, we have all been to the Department of Corrections at some point in time. We've been running up for a whole year. And what we do is we offer, classes to, try to address, mental health, substance use, whatever may be going on with the women that keep having them return back to prison, like domestic violence and sexual assault. And so we think that's so important because it's peer led. And so therefore the women are more prone and receptive to, taking this knowledge. We have a lot of peer-run organizations in the city of Albuquerque that are up and running on their own with no funding, who are out here actually doing the work. We have a lot of organizations that get the money, but aren't on the ground. They are not out here doing the work. And I think that that may be, the disconnect. And when we talk about peers, everybody at some point in time has some type of lived experience, but not everybody's lived experience is relevant, and I know that, they've come up with, some type of where they're sending police officers out and then they're going to send social workers out, and social workers, when people go out, they have to stay in their respective role. And so social workers need to be social workers, police officers need to be police officers. And I think that if you provide peers along beside that, then that may, help strengthen the bond between law enforcement and what's going on in the city. I also think that when it comes to jobs and things like that, ban the box is not on the original application, but further along it is on the application. So people, a lot of people who are in trouble with the law just aren't able to get, a job that could pay a living wage. And then on top of that, you have to go live in the slums. So I also think if we start holding some of these landlords accountable, if we start cleaning up these neighborhoods and things like that, that will also help with the crime, that can keep people on their jobs. Because when you have a job and you barely can make it and you got to live in the slums, you're going to do whatever you got to do to get up out that neighborhood. And that's if if you sell drugs, if you go rob somebody, if you go do whatever. We got October coming up. We got a lot, the eviction moratorium is getting ready to lift. And we're about to have a serious crime rate because we have a lot of people who are not working, who don't want to go to work. And if they do want to go to work, they don't know how to fill out a resume. They don't know how to go to a job interview or dress or talk. We have people, these at-risk kids who may be in trouble with law enforcement, who are coming to court, and their parents either they're coming without their parents, or they don't know how to talk to the judge, or the parent don't know how to talk to the judge, and the judge don't know how to talk to them. We need these judges. They need to start, they need to start being biased. They need to, get some culturally sensitive training, and they need to just really, look into some of the things that they are doing. And if you go in court and you have people who are coming in contact with law enforcement, if we try to get them in and try to figure out what's going on with these people, it's so like with that young lady, Kelly, if we would have got her, we could have probably, seen what else was going on in the home. You cannot just help her. You have to help every single person that's in the household. And just like when you have these kids that are in school that are at risk, you have to help every single person that's in the household. And it's not about if they want the career, if they want to get the career. Some of them just don't know how. They're coming from single families. They just don't have time for that. They're stressed out, and whatnot. I think that some of us need to be strategic in our targeting. We can't help everybody. We work with women. And so I think that if these different organizations that are out in the community start targeting certain groups, I think we'll also be better off. New Mexico is a state. They don't hire people off of their ability or their knowledge. Most people, not most people, but a lot of people, especially returning citizens, get jobs off of who they know, not off of their ability. And I think that, we need to start looking at that. We need these representatives to start paying attention to these grassroots organizations. I know that our organization, like I said, we've been running up for a whole year. We've had little funding, but we have already started hiring returning citizens when we haven't even paid ourselves. And we've reached out to commissioners. We've reached out to the mayor. We've reached out to several people for funding, and we just haven't been able to get it. We just don't know how to, do those types of stuff. But we are providing the work. We have an office space. We provide groups to these women every 2 weeks where we have experts come in. We go do different trainings, and we try to help the women who are coming out of prison not return back. And we know they don't want to go back. So I think that if we start getting, we do need more peer-run organizations. We need to put some courses inside the Department of Corrections. We need courses in there that could train these men and these women to have some type of skill set when they get out, because there's nothing in there for them. We also have to start addressing the mental health and the substance use and all that inside the prison, because a lot of these people that are inside the prison have family members that are on the outside of the prisons who are trying to take care of their home and trying to take care of people in prison, and they're just committing crime and they're just breaking the law. When you become a felon, it's easy, it's easy to break the law. And it's just, that's just the way it is. And until people start getting jobs that they can take care of their families, it's just going to be a continuous cycle. And yeah, that's pretty much all I got.
Thank you so much, Ms. Burleson, for all that insight. And, I heard you say peer run and peer led, super important tenets of the work that you're doing. And it's also been important with what we've heard in past sessions. We heard from Angel Garcia from our violence intervention program, same thing, peer led, peer run, to make sure that we're connecting with folks where they are, that they feel like they have a trusting relationship with someone, to actually move on a path forward. So I appreciate you sharing your experience, your thoughts around, how best to help an organization like yours to build capacity and be able to help as many people as possible, especially meet them where they are. So I appreciate you. Before I get to our final speaker, I just also wanted to acknowledge that we have Nicholas Maestas from Senator Ben Ray Lujan's office on with us as well. So thank you for joining us today. Finally, I'd love to hear from Cristina Duran from New Mexico Highlands University. We're really happy to have you, Ms. Duran, to talk through, so you're the Dean of Social Work. We want to hear about that pipeline. That's a huge need, as you know, in our community, and something that has been mentioned over and over throughout this process. So please give us your thoughts, Ms. Duran.
Thank you, Alicia. Cristina Duran here. I'm the Dean of the Facundo Valdez School of Social Work, New Mexico Highlands University. We've been around for decades, preparing, educating, training professional social workers across the state and beyond. I saw collected some data recently for another presentation. About 96% of our total student enrollment are New Mexicans. We really have a focus on preparing our graduates to stay in the state. We have a branch campus in Albuquerque on Indian School, just west of San Mateo. That's where my office is based, but I do go to Vegas. So we have campuses all over the state, Farmington, Las Vegas, of course, Santa Fe, New Mexico, and here in Albuquerque, Rio Rancho. Let me say a little bit about the social work profession, and then a little bit specifically about our program. Of course, we have a lot to offer, in this overall effort to address crime in the area. And specifically, we've been involved in the current efforts with the Community Safety Department. We've been sort of involved at the outset of the planning for that department. So a little bit about the profession. We offer a bachelor's degree and a master's degree, BSW and MSW degree. We have a large program. Like I said, the overwhelming majority of our students are native New Mexicans, or they reside in New Mexico. A little bit about the profession. And before my part is done, I also want to see, Alicia, if we can fit it in. Tamara Tiedemann is here with me. She's the Director of Field Education for our school, and it oversees the field practicum, field internship part of our program. A little bit about the profession. So the roots of social work are in social justice. So that's something that we are always concerned about and sets us apart from other helping professions. We have a specific framework that where we understand human behavior and the world and so forth, and it's a person in environment framework. So or a systems perspective. So it makes us ideally positioned to work across disciplines and to look at all factors internal to the person, but external to the person or to the family. So we are really used to working with teachers, with law enforcement, with clinicians. Of course, many of our graduates become clinicians themselves, but we're in all kinds of settings. And I think I would consider that to be one of our strengths of working, within and across all kinds of occupations and disciplines. Another thing I think that especially sticks out for our program at New Mexico Highlands is the level of cultural competence that we have in our program. It's a very strong emphasis. It always has been. The mission of our school includes a primary commitment to Hispanic, Latinx, and Indigenous communities. We want our graduates to work with all communities, but that is included in our mission statement. Let me see some other strengths of the profession: serving vulnerable populations. So social workers, in contrast to some of the other helping professions, we are concerned with populations who are either underserved, highly stigmatized, populations that some professions they're not as much of a priority. For social work, they are. So whether it's incarcerated, whether it's people with who are experiencing homelessness, people who are have problems with substance abuse, substance use, and so forth. So this is an area our students learn about the impact of poverty. We need to know about that in New Mexico. This is an underlying factor in all of the issues that we're talking about. Social workers know something about the impact of poverty and how to intervene. Crisis work, of course, is something that is very much in our wheelhouse. And also with social work, we're talking about macro work and micro, meaning that many of our graduates are become clinicians, behavioral health clinicians in all kinds of settings across the state and outside of New Mexico, but macro work as well. We have a leadership and administration concentration. So our graduates go into leadership positions. They're executive directors. They do policy analysis. They do fundraising and lead organizations. So the macro part of social work is equally as important to us as the micro or the clinical. We have 3 concentrations at the MSW level. That's unique for any school of social work in New Mexico. We have a clinical concentration. We have leadership and administration, what we call macro. And we also have a bilingual, bicultural clinical concentration, training graduates to work with monolingual Spanish-speaking clients, very much an underserved population in New Mexico. None of the other schools of social work have the concentrations. It's something I feel always good to share. Another thing to share with all of you is more in relation to the community services department that is still in the planning, very much launching. Mariela Ruiz Angel is one of our graduates in the macro concentration, I'll add. But we offered a special topics graduate class, a lab sort of class where graduate students engaged with the city, with community members to come up with some proposals. This was at an earlier stage of the planning for the community services department. Very popular class. It was a projects-based class taught by Jackie Baldwin. So those are some things that we have been involved with. We're nationally accredited, both our BSW and MSW. I talked about the concentrations. We also have the Native American Social Work Studies Institute, which is funded by the legislature. This is going to enable us to better prepare social workers to effectively serve tribal communities, whether urban or on the reservation. And I guess the one item to just mention is a pipeline initiative that we've had going on for decades with CYFD to address child welfare. And that is a stipend program where students are offered stipends. It's part of a federal grant that gets funneled through the state. These are funds that go to our students to fund their tuition, support their tuition. Remaining funds are, sort of some living allowance, but they sign a contract to work for the department upon graduation. And there's also some assistance in there with fees for licensure, for getting licensed, sitting for the exam, getting licensed and so forth. So that's something that we could consider and talking about, in terms of how we could funnel and direct some of our grads into working with the city in various capacities, some of the ones that you mentioned, Alicia. I'm going to let Tamara Tiedemann just share very, very briefly a little bit about our field education program. I think is so critical to this discussion, but thank you for inviting me. Thank you for having me. Thank you for organizing the event. To those of you, Alicia and the others, Damon Martinez I spoke with recently. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Duran. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. So as Dr. Duran mentioned, we have students both at the bachelor's and master's level. And because social work is a professional degree, students must complete field practicum placement at community-based agencies during their education. The placements reflect the breadth of social work as a profession and as it's practiced specifically here in New Mexico. And some examples can include working in corrections at the local, state, and federal levels, in the judicial system and public defender's office, with law enforcement, and in the areas, for example, of crisis work, homelessness, and substance abuse. Students have an opportunity to learn directly from those who are working in the community dealing with social issues and challenges. Each year, the New Mexico Highlands University School of Social Work has about 400 students do their practicum in more than 200 agencies across the state. And those students provide over 200,000 hours of service to the community. We value our partner agencies and are looking to expand our opportunities through new collaborations. The field practicum prepares students to be ready to serve with a culturally sensitive, systems-based approach to confront the complex challenges facing our community. So thank you, and I'll turn it back over to Dr. Duran if you have anything else to add.
I don't think so. I think that covered. I know there was a chat. I'll look at that and see if I can respond. And no, I look forward to the breakout sessions and engaging with others to address these important issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Duran, and thank you to Tamara. I appreciate you really giving us some insight into the programming that you have, and specifically around diversity and equity and how we can continue to weave those into everything that we do, especially in the educational process, to make sure that we're serving our communities appropriately. So I thank you so much for sharing that with us. As I mentioned, we want to get into breakout sessions. You all will go into breakouts with some fabulous folks who are helping us today. So I want to introduce them. We have Sasha Pellerin, Helen Maestas, Haley Kaddish, Myra Siegel, Stacy Drangmeister, Megan Holcomb, Alicia Briggs, I guess she's my tocaya, Takashi McConnell. They're all going to help us with facilitation and taking very accurate notes so we can compile all this information and have your thoughts and ideas and your priorities as to how best we create this pipeline to make sure that we are filling these necessary positions in every level of the spectrum here. So we're going to go into breakouts. We'll come back at 3:20, and please come back to this room because we'll hear from Mayor Keller after that as well. So enjoy your breakout sessions, and we'll see you in just a bit.